They say the eyes are the windows to the soul, but in 2014, the world discovered that a voice could be a doorway to a past life. It was a cold evening in Oslo when a spindly, 8-year-old girl walked onto the Norway's Got Talent stage, her small frame swallowed by a simple white dress and her feet completely bare. The judges expected a cute, rehearsed nursery rhyme or a high-pitched pop cover, but what happened next sent a literal shiver through the broadcasting world. When Angelina Jordan opened her mouth to sing Gloomy Sunday, the atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. It wasn't just the technical proficiency, it was the texture, a smoky, whiskey-soaked grit that belonged in a 1930s jazz club, not in the lungs of a primary school student. Journalists across Europe scrambled to find the source of this talent, with some even floating wild, supernatural speculations that the child was a musical reincarnation. The footage went viral before going viral was a science, racking up hundreds of millions of views and sparking a global debate. Was this a gift, or was it a burden for a child so young to carry such emotional weight? News outlets began investigating her upbringing, looking for a stage parent narrative, but they found something far more complex. Her family was protective, shielding her from the predatory nature of the early 2010s music industry. They turned down massive contracts that most would kill for, citing the need for her to have a normal childhood despite her clearly abnormal gift. This early refusal to play by the industry's rules set the stage for a decade of mystery. Reporters noted that while other child stars were being pushed into the Disney-style pop machine, Angelina was retreating into the study of jazz legends, seemingly indifferent to the flashing lights of immediate fame. But as the years passed, the silence from her camp grew louder, leading many to wonder if the flame had burned out before it truly ignited. While critics whispered that the lack of footwear was a calculated marketing gimmick, the truth was buried in an encounter on a dusty road years prior. As Angelina's fame transcended borders, one question dominated every press junket and tabloid headline. Why the bare feet? In the high-gloss world of entertainment, where every wardrobe choice is curated by a team of stylists, her refusal to wear shoes felt like a silent protest or a bizarre superstition. Investigative reporters eventually traced the story back to a trip Angelina took to a developing country when she was just 6 years old. There, she reportedly met a young girl her own age who was walking without shoes, her feet scarred by the rough terrain. In an impulsive act of empathy that would define her brand for the next 12 years, Angelina gave the girl her own shoes and made a solemn vow. She would not wear shoes on stage until every child in the world had them. This wasn't just a sweet story for the evening news. It was a logistical nightmare for producers. Stage floors are notoriously dangerous, filled with cables, splinters, and heat from heavy lighting rigs, yet she never wavered. This commitment added a layer of mystique that news anchors found irresistible. It framed her not as a product, but as a young humanitarian with an iron will. However, as she entered her teenage years, the industry began to pressure her to modernize. There were rumors of heated boardroom meetings where executives argued that the barefoot jazz girl image was too niche for American top 40 radio. They wanted heels, glitter, and upbeat dance tracks. The conflict between her personal conviction and the commercial machinery of Hollywood began to leak into the trades. Speculation grew that she was being shelved by power players who couldn't figure out how to market a girl who refused to compromise her soul for a polished aesthetic. It was a standoff that would last years, leaving fans in the dark about her future. Just when the world began to move on, a shadow appeared on the most prominent stage in America, backed by the most feared man in music. In 2020, the mystery of Angelina Jordan took a dramatic turn when she appeared on America's Got Talent, The Champions. This wasn't just another audition. It was a calculated move to reintroduce a new Angelina to the Western world. When she performed her own arrangement of Bohemian Rhapsody, the reaction was visceral. Simon Cowell, a man known for his cynical take on talent, looked visibly shaken. The golden buzzer wasn't just a TV moment. It was a signal to the industry that Angelina was back, and she was no longer a child. News reports at the time suggested that a massive bidding war had erupted behind the scenes between major labels. Yet, despite the massive hype and the viral performance, her career didn't follow the typical trajectory of a talent show winner. There were no immediate album drops, no world tour, and very few interviews. This radio silence led to intense speculation in the music journalism community. Had she signed a restrictive deal? Was there a legal battle over her creative direction? Sources close to the production whispered that Angelina was refusing to record the generic pop songs the label was pushing on her. She wanted to write her own music, a move that is often considered career suicide for a teenage artist in the grip of a major label. Reporters began to look into the Cowell curse, where champions often find themselves locked in contracts that prevent them from releasing music that doesn't fit a specific commercial mold. For 2 years, Angelina became a ghost in the industry, appearing only in cryptic social media posts or short covers on YouTube. The narrative shifted from Prodigy to cautionary tale, as the public wondered if she would become another victim of the industry's wait-and-see tactics. Little did they know, she was quietly building an arsenal of original work that would eventually break the mold entirely. Behind the closed doors of a high-end studio in West Hollywood, the girl who sang about gloomy Sundays was being dismantled and rebuilt. The move to Los Angeles is usually the beginning of the end for many young artists, but for Angelina, it was a period of intense, guarded transformation. Between 2021 and late 2024, her public appearances were so rare that some "Where Are They Now" blogs began drafting her career obituary. Investigative entertainment reporters, however, noted that she wasn't just sitting idle. She was working with Toby Gad, the mastermind behind hits for Beyoncé and John Legend. This partnership was a shock to the system. Gad is known for high-polish, emotionally resonant hits, a far cry from the raw, acoustic jazz of Angelina's youth. Rumors surfaced that the transition was painful. Moving from a Norwegian prodigy to a Los Angeles-based songwriter meant facing the harsh reality of the American market. You are only as good as your last hit. Reporters followed the trail of her developmental years, finding that she was spending 12 to 14 hours a day in the studio, perfecting a sound that merged her vintage soul with modern, cinematic pop. This era was marked by a visible change in her demeanor. She grew taller, her style became more sophisticated, and the eerie quality of her voice matured into something more controlled and powerful. Yet, the question of legal entanglements remained. Why wasn't the music coming out? Some speculated that there were disagreements over her image rights, while others suggested she was waiting for her 18th birthday to gain more legal autonomy over her career. The tension was palpable among her fanbase, who saw her peers rising on the charts while she remained in development. It was a high-stakes game of chicken with the industry. Either she would emerge as a superstar, or she would be forgotten as a childhood phenomenon that couldn't survive the transition to adulthood. On January 31, 2026, the lights of the Las Vegas Strip flickered, as a decade of anticipation finally met its breaking point. The announcement of her residency at the Westgate Las Vegas was the news story that finally closed the book on the missing years. This wasn't just a concert series, it was a declaration of independence. When the curtain rose, the world saw the 2026 version of Angelina Jordan, a polished, commanding performer who had successfully navigated the death zone of child stardom. Reporters covering the opening night noted that the setlist was almost entirely original music from her album Secret of the Soul. The reviews were unanimous. She had done the impossible. She had retained the haunting depth of her 8-year-old self, while adding a modern, commercial edge that could compete with the likes of Adele or Billie Eilish. But the reporting didn't stop at the music. Investigative pieces began to look into the financial structure of her new era. It appeared that she had secured a level of creative control rarely seen in artists under 21. She wasn't just the singer. She was the executive producer of her own life. The 2026 transformation also saw her embracing digital platforms in a way she never had before, crossing the 1 million follower mark on TikTok and using the platform to leak snippets of her writing process. This was a complete 180-degree turn from the guarded, mysterious girl of the previous years. The news narrative shifted from "what happened to her" to "how did she pull this off?" The Residency became a symbol of her victory over the machine. She had waited out the critics, outlasted the skeptics, and refused to let the industry off her career before it truly began. As the lights dimmed on her first Vegas show, the message was clear. The Prodigy was dead and the icon had arrived. As we look back at the 12-year journey of the girl from Oslo, we are left with a question that challenges everything we know about fame. In the final analysis of this decade-long transformation, we have to ask, was the silence actually her greatest strength? In an era where every moment of a celebrity's life is documented and sold, Angelina Jordan's career is a rare example of strategic mystery. Reporters who have followed her since 2014 note that her story is a blueprint for the next generation of talent. She avoided the typical downward spiral that claims so many young stars: no public messes, no legal accusations, and no substance-related rumors. By stepping back and focusing on the craft rather than the clout, she built a brand that is resilient enough to last for decades. Her 2026 success isn't just about a voice. It's about the patience of a legend. We've seen how she handled the transition with a grace that felt almost calculated, protecting her mental health and her vocal cords with equal intensity. The news of her 2026 European tour and her burgeoning film career suggests that we are only in the first chapter of her adult life. As the credits roll on this report, we are reminded of that 8-year-old girl standing barefoot in the Oslo cold. She promised to change the world with her voice, and while she's now a woman standing in the glow of Las Vegas neon, she still hasn't put on her shoes. It's a haunting closing note to a story that shouldn't have been possible. In a world that demands everything immediately, Angelina Jordan proved that the most shocking thing an artist can do is wait until they are ready to be heard.